Hello and welcome to the Many Faces of Cancer podcast. This is your host, Melissa Grosboll, and joining me today is Josh Vintner-Jackson. And Josh was diagnosed with stage 3 colon cancer at age 29 in 2020 while living in Austin, Texas, an age when most people are building careers, not battling life-threatening illness. Now stage 4 since 2023, he's undergone 2 major surgeries, over 40 rounds of chemo, countless hospital stays, and treatment across 3 hospitals in 2 countries. But Josh's story isn't just about survival. It's about resilience with purpose. Before cancer, Josh was running 250-kilometer ultra marathons through deserts and enjoying a sense of adventure across the globe. That same mindset of grit, determination, and forward momentum now fuels his approach to treatment. He faces cancer not with toxic positivity, but with honest acknowledgement of the battle combined with unwavering resolve to keep moving forward. During COVID, Josh spent 6 months doing chemo in complete isolation. No visitors, no support groups, just him and the nurses every 2 weeks. That experience of profound loneliness drove him to create Chat Cancer, a community specifically for young adults in their 20s and 30s navigating cancer. Through monthly coffee meetups in London, Josh is building the support system he wishes he'd had, a space where career disruption, dating with ports, and financial devastation in your prime years are actually understood. Today, Josh focuses on Chat Cancer, helping other young cancer patients build mental fortitude through adversity. His philosophy is simple. You can't control the storm, but you can control how you navigate it. Don't let cancer get in the way of your life. So welcome to the show, Josh.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
What a beautiful bio. I loved reading that.
Yeah, it was actually very enjoyable to write it, and kind of put across a good message, and hopefully it's something everyone can relate with in this position.
Absolutely. Like I said before we got started, I don't know what else we have to talk about. You kind of put everything in your bio and made it very succinct.
Yeah, the quickest podcast ever.
Yeah. All right. Goodbye, everybody. No. All right. So where do you hail from, Josh? What part of the UK are you in?
So right now I live in just outside of a place called Newmarket, which is in Cambridgeshire, and it's very famous for its flat horse racing. If anything, it's the home of flat horse racing in England. And then prior to that, I was living in London up until last summer, but made the choice to get out of the big smoke and up to the countryside for a more peaceful environment, cleaner air, a greener place for recovery rather than just being trapped in the big city.
And what is flat horse racing?
So there's no jumps, so it's just a straight sprint around the track, whereas the jumps racing is kind of in another part of the UK. So everyone around here is in horse racing. You drive around, there's stud yards, there's I think a third of the community are in horses. Some level.
All right. So you need the countryside, you need a lot of land for those horses to hang out and have plenty of space to run around.
Yeah, exactly. And also it's lovely, you go for a walk and you just go across the fields and there's just horses everywhere.
I'm sure that is absolutely beautiful and very serene.
Yeah, good for the soul.
Very cool. All right, Josh, well, take us back to 2020. What were you doing in Austin for starters, and what was going on around the time that you were diagnosed?
Sure. So I suppose, my America journey actually began in 2018. My best friend set up a company called Burst Oral Care. For those of you in the States, you may be familiar with it. It's an electric toothbrush company. And I went out in the early days to kind of join the adventure and startup life. And so moved out to Los Angeles for about 18 months or so and decided actually maybe let's hop around, see America, just try living in different areas. So I moved down to Austin at the end of the summer of 2019. Little did we know COVID was around the corner. Anyway, I kind of went home for Christmas, flew back in December, and then COVID hit. So obviously we all experienced that. Lockdown went down. And it was during lockdown I noticed I was starting to get these weird aches and pains in my sort of lower left tummy, front hip area. Kind of just ignored it as one does when they're 29 and they're a
Right.
single bloke living on their own. You're like, oh, it's nothing. Then things started to change a bit, and this kind of coincided with when Texas sort of lifted their lockdown restrictions, and which I'll get to. I think was probably a blessing in disguise for me. The pains kind of continued, and I noticed that my constipation was through the roof, and I wasn't able to go to the loo and things. So more sort of increased symptoms. Put myself up to urgent care a couple of times to be told, you were probably just constipated. We've done an X-ray. All we can see is just a backlog of poo. So we think you're fine. Take these laxatives and you'll be good to go. They kind of worked, but I still knew something was amiss. So I went back to the urgent care. This was, I think, like the 2nd of July. And I was like, hadn't been to the loo for about 8 days. I was definitely feeling very unwell. The doctor said, take these laxatives. If you're still kind of unwell, come back tomorrow. Anyway, it was the worst 36 hours of my life. Whatever had happened, nothing was coming out, but I could feel it in my tummy. I didn't sleep for about...
Those laxatives were trying to push it out, and there was something blocking it from coming out.
Exactly. So I was just sat there with this bubbling cauldron that couldn't go out anywhere. And
thanks for that visual. Appreciate that.
yeah, gifted with words. Couldn't sleep, and my stomach decided to swell. It just looked like I was sort of suffering from malnutrition. It was just sort of bloated out here. So I just got my literal shit together and crawled up to urgent care, and the doctor on duty just looked at me and was like, "You are in a terrible way, young man. Come through." And so I was instantly put through a CT scan with contrast. I'm sure many people listening are very familiar with that routine. Mm-hmm. And it showed up that there was a tumor the size of a golf ball blocking my sigmoid colon. Weren't sure, obviously at that point, I didn't know if it's cancer or not, but the doctor was in full action mode, I suppose, because he was like, okay, this is really serious. However, it was the 4th of July. I'd just moved to a new city. My support group was kind of relatively small. So the doctor presented me with some options as to how to get to hospital. It was either get an ambulance, but that's quite expensive on the insurance in the States. Get a taxi, or get my friends to drive me. Sadly, all my friends were on a boat getting drunk somewhere, so no one could drive.
Perfect timing, right?
Perfect timing to get me to hospital. I didn't have a car, and obviously was in serious clip, so wasn't able to kind of get myself there. Anyway, the doctor very kindly just said that it was his Christian and Texan duty, I'll never forget his words, to take me to hospital. So at the end of his shift, he got me in his car and he drove me to hospital, and he helped me hobble inside, checked me in, got me in my room. And it was like the most amazing act of kindness from the start of this whole journey that kind of I experienced. Also very helpful having a doctor check you in to a hospital. You kind of skip a lot of the nonsense. Yeah. So this was in the South Austin Hospital, and everything was like quite new and overwhelming. Obviously, you're kind of like, I'm 29, I've got a tumor, I'm in hospital, what's going on? I was on Saturday night. Sunday came around, prodded, poked, probed by all the different specialists, and they basically said, right, we're going to prep you for surgery tomorrow morning. We've got to get this thing out. Monday morning rolls around, and the surgery, I can't remember the name, but they removed 15 inches of colon, 15 lymph nodes, 8 were cancerous, 7 were not. The tumor was the size of, that had been blocking me, was the size of the golf ball. Luckily, they took it all out in one go, so I didn't need a bag. Stitched me back up, and then sort of came in for the debrief, and scarily told me that I was about 36 hours away from the tumor. It was growing at such a speed that it would rupture. It would have ruptured my colon, and everything would have just fallen out into my bloodstream, and
Oh
I
my
probably would have
gosh.
just sort of died a very painful death on the sofa watching Netflix if I'd not actioned anything.
Once
So I
again,
was,
perfect timing.
yeah, exactly, perfect. Like things all fell into place.
Right.
And I'll go back to the point about how Texas had lifted their restrictions early. So I feel the diagnoses were more in my favor rather than saying, oh, it might be COVID or it might be something else. There was more focus on it being like an actual disease.
Something else besides
Yeah,
COVID, right? Yeah.
and sadly more sinister. They then tested it for cancer, came out positive, stage 3, and then they also date checked it, and it turned out that the tumor had started life as a polyp when I was about 12 years old. So it
Wow.
had been in my system for, I don't know, what was that 15, 16 years, but had only accelerated in the last 5 months. It had turned cancerous. Which then put me into like, well, if I had got checked out at 24, would I have skipped this hurdle or not? So it threw a few questions into my head. But
But
anyway,
they
I
don't
ended
do
up,
colonoscopies when you're 24 years old.
no,
Not routinely
exactly.
anyway.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And it really kind of sped up my education on sort of the medical field in the way that early observation is actually something that's super important. And it should, especially with colonoscopies, there's no reason, like, why shouldn't you do one at 24? It's just a policy that, you have to do it when you're older.
Well, I just read a study that showed that colon cancer is now the number one cancer death in people under 50. And you're
Yeah.
not even scheduled for routine colonoscopies until you're 50.
Yeah. Which in this case is makes no sense, really, does it?
Right.
It's like you kind of get you before you even had the scan.
Right.
And also, to support your point, colon cancer is, I can't remember the statistic off the top of my head, but has had such a rapid increase in young people in the last 5-6 years. I think it's kind of like 8% or something like that, which is a crazy diagnosis. That number I don't think is right, but yeah.
Well, yeah, but still,
But it's still
it's a big
high, and
deal.
it's still
Yeah.
something that's scary.
Right.
Yeah, so then I
So,
was back in the hospital, and then had to go through the process of calling all my family, and they then had the heartache and the frustration of there was a travel ban on between the UK and the US, so all they could do is just kind of like deal with this news down the phone, and that's it. There was no ability for them to travel, and actually that was stuck in place for about 2 years. So for them,
wow.
yeah, I think the travel ban lifted at like the end of 2021 when flights could happen. So running through sort of multiple painful phone calls was not the one. However, I think I was on quite a lot of painkillers, so that kind of like numbed the conversation a bit. And kind
Like, I
of,
can't see my family, but I don't really care.
yeah, like I'm like emotionally detached through morphine,
Right.
so I can now actually have these conversations. So I spent the week in hospital. I think it was 5 or 6 days recovery, because the surgery had literally sort of, it's a bit like a C-section. It just cut open my little abdomen and then keyholed across the chest. So I kind of had like a bullet spread and then a
So your
slash.
family didn't even know that you had cancer until after you had done the surgery. It happened
Yeah.
that fast.
So I only really had time to speak to my mum, dad, and my grandparents. No, I think it was just my mum and dad before the surgery. And I was like,
Okay.
hey, they found a tumor in my colon. I'm in hospital. It might be cancer. I'm going into surgery. And they were like, what the hell's going on? And I was like, well, I'll see you on the other side. And actually, I woke up feeling very guilty that I had been able to tell other people I was close to in time beforehand. Because I was only like, God,
I
what if
mean,
I...
you had some other things in your mind and other
Yeah.
things going on.
Yeah, there was a lot. And everything moved at such a fast pace then that I was kind of caught up in it. But the surgery went well, and the protocol was take 8 weeks off to recover, and then we'll start you on chemotherapy. So my best friend, who I was working with, he was in LA. He flew down to get me out of hospital. So on the Friday when I was discharged, it was nice to have a friendly face come and pick you up. And we drove home, and then he ended up staying with me for pretty much that whole 8 week period, just get me back on my feet and recover. And it was actually kind of like a nice, fun time. I learned to. It was a lovely summer. My birthday, funny enough, was the 17th of July, so it was about a week and a half after all this happened.
Nice.
So my little Austin community did a little tea party, and I was sat there in a wheelchair with bandages around me, and we had a chocolate cake. My friend dressed up as a nurse. It was very comical. And then we spent that 8 weeks just kind of, for those of you familiar with Austin, just walking along the river, getting my strength back and kind of healing, and then inevitably prepping for chemo. So September rolls around, and I then actually moved hospitals up to the Del Seaton in central Austin rather than being down in the one in South Austin. And my sister was working also in the works on a yacht, and the yacht was in Florida at the time when I started chemo. So she was able to take some time off and see me and help. So that was nice to have a family member come and sort of be a part of this.
Fortunately, they were still able to fly in the States.
Yeah, internal travel was okay, which was
right.
useful. So she was with me before chemo, got me prepped, and then I think she was with me for like the first round, and I had the port fitted, and then my chemo, I think it was Folfox, Folfuri with oxaliplatin. And for those familiar with that, or not familiar, you go into the clinic for your 6-hour infusion that you're given on the spot, or however long it takes. And then you're given this device, it's called like a pump, which has a 48-hour bag of chemo in. I think it was the Folfuri. And you're basically drip fed a milliliter per minute. And then at the end of that, you go back into hospital and have it removed. Yes. So that was, honestly, I hated it. The pump had this horrible clicking noise, which was very quiet to begin with, but like it ate into your subconscious a bit. And every time you heard the click, you then felt nauseous because it was chemo going in your body. And,
oh my gosh. Well, at least you had warning.
Yeah.
But it ends up being this Pavlovian thing. So anytime you hear a click now, you know.
Oh, I mean, it came to haunt me later down the line. Towards the end of chemo, it was like I'd hear the click and from someone else and getting their pump attached, and it would trigger this reaction of feeling nauseous without even being attached to anything. It's really bizarre. Anyway,
so you were finally able to go back home at some point, right?
Yes. Yeah. So ran the 6 months of chemo in full, isolation. And then at the end of that was told, you're good. You're in remission now. There's no evidence of disease. We've removed it from surgery, which was great, because I felt that 6 months of pure isolation, I needed some positive news, rather than getting out and being told, oh, it's still there. So getting to the point of getting back to the UK, when I finished the chemotherapy, it was in April of 2021. And then I went back home at the end of that year, having spent a great time in Austin, living free and thinking that it was all over. Get back to the UK, first time I've seen family in 2 years, and it was for Christmas. England was coming out of COVID, so it was a bit of a celebratory time. Anyway, I then get the phone call on the 27th of December from my doctor to inform me that my Signatera test had come back showing evidence of disease again. Somewhere in the body, they found cancer cells in my bloodstream. So I kind of kept it to myself. as, I guess I was a bit in denial, but also I didn't really know much more information other than there's something there. We're not sure where it is. So I was like, okay, this is quite an open-ended statement. I'll wait till I'm back in the States to get some
Well,
more info.
right. And it's very interesting because I don't mean to interrupt you, but that's kind of what I have noticed in my research because I get the Signatera testing done every 6 months as well. And, I kind of said, I said, so what happens if it's positive? I mean, just because there's some cancer cells floating around in your bloodstream, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've found a home and they're growing again. So is it just something that's a wait and see or more testing or, kind of what happens when it comes back positive? Because you don't necessarily just want to start chemo again because
No.
it may just be floating around without ever finding a home.
Yeah, exactly. And you're completely right. And like, what do you do?
Right.
I don't know. I didn't have an answer then, and I don't have an answer now. It's kind of like
You just
you,
did the wait and see, right?
yeah, you've just kind of got
Yeah.
to wait for the data to show something more. Maybe it's or scanned, God forbid, to show it's found a home. Because when it's just floating around the bloodstream, you're like, well, it's like a bottle in the out at sea, just floating around. Where's the home?
Well,
um,
and most of us really have cancer cells floating around in our bodies at all
yeah,
times. It's just whether our immune system can fight them, get rid of them, or not. So it could just be, granted, with Signatera, it's still got the qualities of your original tumor. So you know that it's a little bit more important. But at the same time, what do you do?
yeah, yeah. Sit and wait. Try not to think about it.
Try not to think about it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Which is what I did, and is what I spent most of 2022 doing as well. So I got back to the States, saw my doctor, and she basically said, "Look, we don't know where it is. We're going to send you down to MD Anderson in Houston to chat to some of the specialists there, maybe get on a clinical trial," which was a bit, looking back on it, it was a bit of a scattergun approach as opposed to being like quite strategic. So I spent most of 2022 going up and down to MD Anderson. I got put forward for 2 clinical trials, which thankfully I didn't do because it would have just like, one of them was to delete your immune system with chemo and then restart it with stem cells. And I basically meant living in a bubble in a hospital for 6 months.
Fun.
Yeah, great. And with heart, now I'll get to kind of like the diagnosis and stuff in a minute. But if I'd done that, that would have been like the wrong thing for treating what I've got, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
luckily, we didn't do that. But we get to October of 2022, and prior to that, for some context, I picked up COVID in 2021, and after COVID, my scans showed that there were these sort of tiny, tiny little black marks on the outside of my lungs, which the doctors believed was just scar tissue from COVID. That was their hypothesis all the way through
Back to that
till
COVID thing
October.
again.
Yeah, till
Yeah.
October of 22, when my doctors suddenly thought, okay, the scans are showing that like these black marks, there's a couple more that have appeared on the outside of the lungs. So we think they might be connected. The dots were starting to join here. So I was put forward for a wedge lung biopsy where they kind of crack open the ribs, and they went in and they took a sample from the top, middle, and lower sections of my right lung and tested these little black dots, and they all came back as colon cancer cells. So what had
Mm.
happened is somehow there was still disease left after the surgery, or something was missed. Then the floaty round Signatera warnings showed that they were actually colon cancer cells, and then the black dots were then making a home. Anyway, that then leveled me up, to stage 4 colon cancer of the lungs. Bloody mouthful.
Right.
And that was when like the serious conversation was had that you're unlikely to get rid of the disease. Now it's metastasized. you are in chronic disease diagnosis. You're going to be living with it, unconditionally, and then, go from there. And chemo for life, which wasn't really what I wanted to hear for, I was 30 then, 31. And yeah, it was kind of like a real eye opener. I guess that my original diagnosis kind of seemed quite easy because it was just like a surgery, a bit of chemo done, and you're in the clear. This is like very serious. You're back in the trenches. Your disease is never going to go away. And that pump with chemotherapy that you hate, you're going to do that every 2 weeks. So
no clicking, hopefully.
Yeah, no clicking. So I was like, oh, this is not the one. So I kind of went home and assessed the options, and went up to, the hospital in New York. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, saw a specialist there, and she actually gave me a bit more kind of positive energy, I suppose, which was, you're young, you're fit, you can actually do chemo cycles. It's not just going to be like every 2 weeks. Like if you're not experiencing symptoms and there's no growth, everything's stable, then you could probably just live it normally, and then but under surveillance, and then as and when should things change, then you can undergo chemo. So for me, that kind of gave me a bit of hope, rather than thinking, God, I can't be doing this every 10 days. And at the time, my 5 years in the States was also coming to an end on my visa. So I was due to come home in February. This will happen in October, November. So I only had 2 or 3 months left, and spoke with work and my family. And we kind of, as a trio, decided that staying on in America might be too much. So, because I was off work, so I was just kind of like there for the sake of it.
Right.
So I made the decision to come home. So I moved home in February of 2023, back to London. I did, I think, 3 rounds of chemo in America before coming home, and it was my first introduction to a drug called cetuximab, which was the worst. Maybe I think actually it was worse than the pump, because it gave me a full facial, full body rash to the point of no return. Yeah, it's like weighing up these options wasn't the best. So I moved back to London, transitioned to a hospital called UCLH in central London here. Met my new team, got on really well with them, and I wasn't experiencing any symptoms. So we decided, hey, like, you just come back home. You don't really need to be doing chemo because, you've got cancer, but it's all kind of chilling. It's stable. Mm-hmm. So I thought, great, don't have to worry about treatment. And I was very much in the mindset of dodging it as much as I could. So I spent the rest of that year having a great time, catch up with friends, went to weddings, living in ignorance for a little bit.
Or denial.
Denial, yeah, a bit of both. I mean, what else are you going to do at my age?
Of course, what, you were 32? Like, come on.
We'll have some fun. But always there's something in the shadows, and I was developing this horrible cough. And again, like, in denial, I was like, oh, maybe it's because it's cold in England, or I tried to blame it on some mold. Thought there was some mold in the house. Thought that was the issue. Just really evading all options. Anyway, February of 2024, the cough was so bad. I couldn't have a conversation with you like this without coughing, even sat down. I was coughing up a lot of fluid, bit of blood. That was kind of my point where I was like, right, look, you've been through so much already. Like, get a grip. Just be honest with the oncologist. Did a scan, realized that actually everything in the lungs was getting really noisy and aggressive, and actually that was what was causing it. And the issue, which is now the permanent one, is a serious amount of inflammation across this sort of section of my lung system. So what it had done is it reduced my airways to, rather than sort of it being like this, sucking through a straw. Anyhow, again, back into the chemo routine. Cetuximab, God, what else? I think it was 5-FU. Back on the pump. However, in the UK, they don't use a device with a clicker. It's like this balloon, and it slowly sort of just through pressure, just pushes it out through. So no ongoing kind of like mental triggers. It was just a peaceful balloon exchange of drugs for 48 hours. And yeah, so in to sort of speed things up, from 2024 is when like this section of cancer treatment began, and I kind of really did start to take it more seriously. And from then until now, really, I've been on off chemo, breaks being 8 weeks rather than months, to keep the inflammation at bay on my lungs, keep it from spreading, getting too aggressive. Sadly, this is where like the inhibitions on kind of like your lifestyle do take effect. It's like I can't run anymore, or kind of do any form of serious exercise without being super out of breath. So like, you know, I've replaced running with walking. If I go to the gym, it's a slow sort of weight session. Stairs were a challenge, but we've conquered them now. They were,
Good.
yeah, they were at Christmas. I had a lung infection and I couldn't walk up the stairs, so I had to like go up on my bum, up, and then stand up at the end. But now that the infection's gone, we've conquered it. But
Good.
I suppose the big challenge was definitely accepting that transition into a different stage of life, of like losing physical ability, being in the chemo cycle. And, you know, it's not just the chemo cycle, it's like all the other drugs that come with it.
Right.
Steroids, you know, they're great at keeping you up at night when you don't want to be awake. Morphine for pain. You know, I was like, hold on, I'm on 60 milligrams of morphine a day. That's an addict's dream. And then I'm just being given it just for pain. And yeah, so for now, sort of life is good. It's balanced in a way that I know my routine with chemo, and oddly, I am a weird patient where I kind of respond really well to being on the chemo cycle now. I've got all the symptoms under control through pretty good kind of anti-nausea routine, so that makes things quite pleasant apostrophes.
Well, as pleasant as it can be.
Exactly. And when I come out of it, I can bounce back within about a day, which is good. You know, energy levels are okay. You still get tired, but I'm happy with kind of how it looks. But it didn't come without its challenges. Last year, I think I spent 40 days in hospital across 3 different trips with lung infections. You know, you're suddenly like, my immune system's shot to pieces. So you kind of got to taper that. Those are the unexpected nuisances of kind of living with the disease ongoing, is suddenly finding yourself on a hospital ward for 10 days on oxygen. And you're like, get me out of here.
I call cancer as the gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah.
And the gifts that you don't want to get.
No, certainly not. Certainly not. But the key things I've found has been kind of looking outside of, obviously chemo is important, but things like diet, exercise, all the little other bits have been a big focus for me in my, I guess, policy in living, and counterbalancing the heaviness of all these drugs.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit, because I mean, you touched on what you were going through, you know, through all this time and all the isolation and things. So let's chat a little bit about Chat Cancer, and you know, how that came about, and you know, and just kind of talk about that a little bit. What's going on with that right now?
For sure. So I started Chat Cancer. Chat Cancer was started out as a thought when I walked into a chemo clinic, originally in Austin and then subsequently in London, and realized I was the youngest person by quite a few years. Then twin that with the whole isolation issue of my original diagnosis, of just being very alone and not really having someone who has the same shared experience of the same age that you can just kind of be like, God, this is, or how do you date? Or do you drink alcohol? Like, or how do you tell your family about this or your siblings? And all these questions sort of came to mind. And I realized, like, I've had to do this. Maybe there's a way I can help other people in this position. At the time, I think I was 4 years of diagnosis. So I'd accrued these experiences and knowledge that I wanted to use to help others. Obviously, then seeing an increase in rates of young people getting diagnosed with this disease, even people I knew, I suddenly thought, right, something has to be done. So I created this sort of framework in my mind of, let's just have a chat of kind of dealing with the big C with a little c. So a little conversation about the big topic over a coffee or a hot drink. And we started off with our first meeting at my flat in London. A couple of people I've been introduced to with cancer, all of the same age. And we sat down, and I thought it was going to be like a quick hour. We were there for 4 hours just chewing the fat and really getting to, like, it was really epic, I'll say, like very cathartic, very humbling, and amazing how like similar everyone's situations had been, even though they may have been different on face value. So I then kind of leveled it out, and we started to get some product sponsors, I guess, from like healthy food and supplement companies. They like a local cafe sent like avocado on sourdough bread for breakfast for everyone. Really like nice sort of aspects of people who wanted to help grow this community, but weren't cancer sufferers themselves. But they were like, "Hey, this sounds like a great initiative. Let's help you." And so we then kind of grew, and we got our numbers up. We stayed still drinking coffee and having avocado and stuff at the flat, and sharing these our war stories, so to speak. Then, because I got quite sick last year, I had to put it on ice. So now where we're at is big relaunch this as of this month. I'll be finding a new time in London in February, March for our first official meeting. I've got a board together to get us registered as a charity, so that we can then start taking on donations and kind of expand. But in the meantime, the main effort is to really build out the community. I think we're up to about, it was very small, about 20 people on a little WhatsApp group, spread in age between kind of 20 to 38, 39, complete medley of diagnosis. But what's been really, I guess, like amazing is how open and kind of honest everyone's been, like especially on like the conversations on the group. And what I would really like to see down the line is kind of like a buddy system within it. So say, for instance, you've been suffering from, I don't know, breast cancer for 3 years. Someone else comes in and they're like, I'm newly diagnosed. You can pair up, you can tell them what to expect from a patient perspective. You can speak them through what they're going through, and kind of really create that non-medical support. We've all been to hospitals where the doctors try and tell you, how you should be feeling or whatnot, but it can be a bit dry. Whereas if it's someone who's in the same position as you, you can you might be a bit more open or a bit more, what's the word? Yeah, I suppose open to the support of someone who's in that same position.
Like that peer-to-peer support group versus
exactly
doctor-patient thing.
Exactly that. So it's become really exciting.
That is fantastic.
Yeah. And now, and what's really cool as well is other charities have reached out to me in the UK to want to partner or help grow or have us help their initiative with young people as well. So kind of like a cross-pollination. So my dream now is to like get it in multiple cities over this year and just do our utmost to help everyone in this category and provide a good support that is lacking.
Well, I will say that is definitely lacking in a lot of areas. So I love that you are doing that. And maybe at some point you can bring it to the States as well.
Well, I love the US and I'm due a visit back, so it would be great to kind of do a road show. I don't know.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, Josh, where can people find you? Where, if they want to reach out to you, if they want more information about chat cancer or just more information about, your journey, what is the best way for people to be able to get a hold of you?
Sure. So contact me on LinkedIn or Instagram. Um,
Okay. And we'll
I've got
put
my,
those in the show notes.
yeah,
Absolutely.
on the show notes, and I'll send you my work email as well. I realised I forgot to send that through. But I say work email, official email for chat cancer. So
Okay.
direct line. And then, yeah, so that'll be the best way to contact me. And then also, if anyone's of our age and they just want to chat, I'm doors always open. I
Okay.
I feel everything I've learned and gone through is an experience that needs to be put to purpose. And so any advice I can give, it's freely given.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for your time today, Josh. This was such a great conversation. And I love how you are taking your own experience and using it to help others. That is, I think that's one of the blessings of a cancer diagnosis is how everybody who's gone through it just wants to help other people and do things for other people. So I really appreciate your time today. And yeah, let's definitely stay in touch.
Yeah, no, thank you very much for having me. It's been wonderful to share everything,
Of
and
course. All right. Have a great rest of your day.
take care.
Bye bye.
Bye.